Hello and welcome to Where Creatives Connect. My name is Jamie Sharp and this is the podcast that brings you creatives from all walks of life, whether they be actors, poets, musicians, composers, you name it. I'll have them on the podcast and do my best to bring out the golden goodies that you want to hear about their lives. Today, I am absolutely over the moon to have not only a wonderful musician, an amazing composer, band leader, to name but a few of the things he does, but also somebody that has been an amazing friend and mentor to me over nearly 20 years. Andy Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Jamie.
That's all right.
I'm loving this conversion, by the way, this space you've created as well.
It looked a lot worse about 2 months ago. So, yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
For the people that are meeting you for the first time, this question is geared up for them. Imagine you're at the Piccadilly train station on the way back from the RNCM. You've got your sax over your shoulder and somebody's come up to talk to you and they're a bit chatty and they want to know what you do for a living. What do you say to them?
Yeah, interesting one. No, I might just say I'm a musician. To just keep it really simple, I'm a musician. And then within that sort of, word or world, there's a whole host of things, and then it just becomes fascinating as you delve into. But I'd say I'm a musician. I play the saxophone. I write music, and I've got a train to catch. Bye.
Yeah, see you later. Do you find when people ask you that, depending on who they are, do you cater the answer slightly differently if you know they maybe are in the industry and they might understand a bit more about what you do? Because, as I said in the intro, you're not just in one category, you do a whole host of different things.
Yeah, I remember I was at a friend's wedding and a musician, and we were sitting on this table and there was this singer-songwriter, I won't mention her name, but she's had a number of hits and all this kind of thing, and a while ago, so I kind of pretended that I didn't know who she was. And at one point I just said, "Oh yeah, what do you do?" Because I was being a bit mischievous. And I thought, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what her reaction. She said, "Yeah, I write music and I sing."
So nice and humble.
That was it.
Beautiful.
She didn't say, it was like, she didn't sort of brag about anything or get the hump because of, don't you know who I am? Anything like that. And I thought, yeah, that's really interesting because ultimately, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
What's important to you, for me, it's just music is just the thing for me. It's not about anything else. It's just playing my saxophone, trying to improve and find a way doing that's right for me, and writing music, and collaboration, because, all those periods of isolation, they're for a reason, or I like to think they are, and so that you can enjoy it more when the real magic happens when you collaborate with people and you get the interaction.
When I was doing my homework on you, I found out that I knew a fair amount over the last 15ish years, but I really don't know much about you growing up. So take us back to, let's say, 10-year-old Andy. Would it be a clear pathway from 10-year-old you into the music world? Or was it a bit of a surprise to your family and your friends that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was brought up in a family where there were lots of musicians. So my grandparents, for example, they had this big old house near London, and they were both pianists. And within this old house, they had two particular rooms. Each room had a grand piano in, and so all the opera singers that used to come over from all around the world for some productions in London, they would normally come to their house and they'd be their kind of rehearsal pianists, I guess.
Wow.
They do things like that. And then my auntie, she was a cellist and teacher. She went to, I can't remember whether it's the Royal Academy or Guildhall. She studied at music college. My dad went to the Royal College of Music in London. He was a clarinetist and pianist. So there was always music around, and I was always hearing my dad playing the piano. Mm-hmm. It was there all the time. He just played the piano all the time. So there was always music around me. When I went to Poole Grammar School, because I was born in Bournemouth, my parents were both from the northwest, actually. My mum's family were from Liverpool. My dad's Wilmslow near Manchester. But he was offered a head of music role at a secondary school in Bournemouth in the mid-1960s. So he went down there, or they moved down there in, I don't know, maybe 1964 or 65. I came along in 1966. And so hence being in that Poole, Bournemouth area. Went to secondary school, Poole Grammar School, and that's when I took up the saxophone. So I guess I was 12. And I was kind of lucky in that the teacher there was a guy called Bill Brown. And Bill used to play for the Joe Loss Orchestra and bands like Sid Lawrence. Very well known in that world as a fantastic baritone sax player and a great clarinetist as well. When he retired later on, he ran his own big band in Bournemouth, the 2CR big band that was just on the radio all the time and gigging, had a big following. So Bill was a fantastic performer, and for some reason, you know, as same as all of us, you know, you have to make a living. He was in the school teaching like kids like me.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was good, and my music teacher, Bob Hayden Gilbert, who I still keep in touch with, again, a great musician. And there were some lessons where he'd just sit down at the piano and he'd just play through various sonatas by Beethoven or whatever, and that was our music lesson that day.
Brilliant.
It wasn't all talking and learning dates of when Mozart was born or died, or something like that.
It was the real stuff.
Yeah, it was actually music in a music lesson.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was the sort of early thing that happened, and then round that time, so I suppose when I was maybe 14, there seemed to be loads of big bands, loads of youth big bands. And it ended up with me playing in big bands about 5 or 6 nights a week.
Wow.
Rehearsing with youth big bands. And then there were a couple of semi-pro bands. So when I was 16, I was asked to play second alto sax in this semi-pro band that played at a few of the hotels in Bournemouth. So I was then in these bands with all these pro players and semi-pro players. We get a coach every now and again up to Watford Coliseum. They had these big band weekends.
Wow.
And all that kind of thing. So I was playing, I wasn't an improvising musician. I didn't really do any improvising at that point, but I was playing big bands all the time, and so my sight reading was good. I was developing, even though I probably didn't know it, some kind of sense of feel just through playing that music and being around people who were good at it, you know. And then, we ended up doing the school proms with one of these bands, which was great. So it was this National Festival for Youth, and they commissioned a piece by the trombonist Don Lusher, who was he was first lead trombone with the Ted Heath big band, and you know, hugely respected composer and trombonist. And he came along, and we rehearsed at the Albert Hall with him, playing this new piece, and it was on telly. This is when the school proms. It was on BBC Two.
Okay.
So things like that were happening, but I suppose I wasn't really practicing. There wasn't really time to practice because with school and everything, and then playing loads of bands. But you're playing and you're learning it all the time, and you're just enjoying it. You're just having a great time. But then, normally I keep this bit quiet, but I'll let you into a secret here. So my mum and dad, they were always maybe a little bit disappointed I played the saxophone. And not like
the sort of rebellious instrument.
Exactly.
Of them all. Yeah.
I think my dad would have preferred it if I played French horn or something like that. Good, solid orchestral instrument. So I said, right, I think I was 15 or no, maybe 16. I said, okay, we'll meet halfway here. I'll learn an instrument. So it was the bassoon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only way I could learn it or practice it or do anything was to get up early. So I used to get up an hour earlier than I would have done. Every day before school.
So you really gave it a lot at that time?
I did about 45 minutes to an hour practice every morning before breakfast, and I did that for a year, and I did my grade 8 after just over a year, I think. Not that matters, but the reason I mention it is because it opened up all of a sudden. I took a year out after sixth form. I knew by then I wanted to go to music college largely because I was useless at everything else at school. I didn't really enjoy school. I kind of did because of the other kids there and friends and everything. But I didn't. I wasn't academic, and the grades were. I probably in an ideal world I would have left school and not done a sixth form.
Yeah.
Because I had to, try and do subjects that I didn't want to do and I wasn't interested in the slightest, like geography and maths. And whereas really at that point all I wanted to do was just play music. So failed all my A-levels. Then what's going to happen now? Took a year out, and there was this fantastic music centre a lot of my friends went to. So I ended up playing, they have an orchestra there, the Wessex Youth Orchestra, which is celebrating its 50th year this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, they're brilliant. And a fellow called Don Riddell conducted that, who is, again, he was one of these, everyone was so scared of him. He was a great musician, but it was good for the discipline, and I'm there parping away on second bassoon.
Amazing.
But it means I can experience different styles of music for the first time, in addition to big bands.
Open your ears to a whole new platform.
Yeah, did auditioned at the RNCM for some reason, so the Royal Northern College of Music, and for some reason, there was no real career advice then or anything like that, and I just auditioned at the RNCM and decided, even though I'd never been there, and I didn't know who taught saxophone there or anything, but maybe it's because of the family roots, so there was something in me that wanted to go to the Northwest.
Yeah.
Didn't audition anywhere else. And the first year I did that, I went up there. I liked it. I liked the vibe of the place and really friendly people and everything. But I wasn't offered a place. So that's why I took that year out and then came back. Just did RNCM again, nowhere else. It was so foolish.
Interesting.
So foolish. Anyway, fortunately, they offered me a place. And I think the reason they did was because I went in and played bassoon and sax.
So you showcased both of your skills.
And as is the case now, as you know, double reed instruments, oboes, bassoons, everyone needs them.
Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah. And also at that point, there were hardly any sax players at music college. It was the first time, in fact, that at the Royal Northern they'd ever had 2 principal study saxophonists in the same year at college. And even, that's Rob Buckland and myself, and Rob was their joint first study sax and clarinet, and I was sax and bassoon.
Brilliant.
So it still hadn't reached that point, you can come here and study saxophone. And that's mid-1980s. How different now?
It's hard to imagine in some ways. When you were at college, you formed the Apollo Saxophone Quartet with Rob and, am I right in thinking it was Will Gregory and Tim Redpath? Nearly. So Tim played soprano. He was there as principal study clarinet. Played sax as well, very, very well. John Rebeck, also a friend of Tim's. They both come up from Swindon. Were both principal study clarinet. The college realised in the first week, we've got 4 sax players, So they literally said, right, here you go. You're going to rehearse in this room every Friday afternoon. Okay.
And just chucked us in there, and we just had to figure out, let's choose an instrument. What are we going to play? So they gave me a college tenor sax. I'd never played tenor.
Wow. Okay.
Because I played alto in all the big bands that I did.
Yeah.
So they gave me a tenor sax, and I quite liked it. And same with John on baritone. Rob was an alto. Tim on soprano, which he felt comfortable with his clarinet playing and the size of the instrument and all that kind of thing. So, and that's how it started. But that was literally the end of the first week of the first term.
Gosh. Now, just before Christmas, I was lucky enough to record Apollo with, was it 5 brand new commissions?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
5 brand new commissions, and you mentioned that it's been 37 years that you've stayed together with a few different faces in there, but you and Rob from the very beginning all the way through. And you've also mentioned that there was probably over 120 brand new commissions that, because of Apollo, have come to light. Was that something you set out to do initially or in the early stages, or has that just come about because of the lack of repertoire that was there?
Yeah, that's it. So the first couple of years, the same as most student quartets, sax quartets. You go through, you play all the music that's there, and at that point in time, there was a lot of sort of French, Belgian music, a couple of pieces by American composers, Dutch composers, and then there was a lot of kind of lighter music. But you know, if you're rehearsing, by this point we were rehearsing nearly every day.
Yeah.
And you soon get through all that, and you want something new, and that's when you start thinking, right, what are we gonna do? How can we create some repertoire? And that's how it all started.
37 years to do anything, friendship, marriage, a job, is really tricky. What do you think it is that's kept this group together?
That is a very good question. I don't know. And if you look at chamber ensembles in the world of music, you know, not very many of them last this long or anywhere near it. So I think there's an element of luck. There has to be, in terms of you've got 4 different people, different personalities, and then as you know, as you grow older, yeah, you're right. Families come into the equation. The reality of making a living. I think we were just fortunate that we were all going for the same sort of things and could communicate well together, same aims and so on. And also it was a very exciting time. The first 10 years, especially because you're doing competitions, and then if you win a few of those things, you end up, you might be offered gigs or a tour, or not just a sort of cash prize. So we ended up doing a lot of travelling, and it kind of developed. But then inevitably something's going to change. And the first thing to change was after 10 years, John on baritone, John Rebeck, he had a love for flying as well. And whenever on long haul flights go somewhere, you know, everyone else is like trying to get some sleep and the lights are down. His lights on the plane. He's got these maps and charts out.
Amazing.
Looking at things. Yeah. Anyway, he when he was 30, he did his pilot exams, became a pilot, was offered a job with Dragonair, I think it was, part of Cathay, and then needed to relocate to Hong Kong and become a pilot, and that's what he did.
Wow.
So at that point, you mentioned Will Gregory before.
Yes.
At that point, there was this uncertainty. Oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah, of course.
You know, we need to get someone else on baritone sax, and we'd worked with Will in a group called London Saxophonic, and he'd written some great pieces for sax quartet as well. So Will joined the group, but just without going through the whole history of the group, we've only had, I think, 4 personnel changes over all that time. It's not been chopping and changing all the time.
Yeah.
You know, there are some groups have been going for that long, but none of the original players are in it.
Yes,
You
it's
know,
just the name that
it's
is
the
maintained.
name that continues. Finishing this kind of little bit, it's really fascinating with John, because as you know, I just returned last night from France near Bordeaux, which is where John lives now. He contacted me. So when he was 30, pilot, Hong Kong, we didn't have any contact maybe for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. Then suddenly I got a message, and this would have been, again, maybe 10 or 15 years ago from now, saying, listen, Andy, I want to play my saxophone again. I want to get back into music, and I'll have more time to do it. And yeah, I'm doing the fewer hours with the piloting and stuff. And we just got a dialogue going, and again, he had that passion for it. And then he ended up, because he's got, you know, good business sense as well, which a lot of musicians don't.
Yes.
And
it's tricky.
yes. Next thing, he's got his own band in Hong Kong, and he gets me over to guest with them. And then a couple of years later, he's co-director of Hong Kong Jazz Festival.
Incredible.
I know. And then says, right, I've got this 3-day project, you know, with the City Chamber Orchestra, and I want you and Bob Mintzer to write a program of music to do string, orchestra, rhythm section, and
Casual.
yeah, it was like, God, this is crazy, you know. But this is, you know, I was saying before, earlier on, you know, there was no career advice, and there still isn't.
Yes.
It's just like, but some people can't hack that, but actually, I understand that. That's it's each their own. But it's like that's what I love about it. You don't know what's around the corner. And there are different things going on, and you have to kind of be on your toes and willing to keep your mind and your ears open. I love all that. You know, some of it works out, some of it's a disaster, but you know.
But you keep going and you keep pushing
Yeah.
through it. That's a really healthy approach to it as well, instead of panic stations. What is going to happen, the unknown,
Yeah.
sort of embracing it.
So the last few days I've been writing with John. We've decided this year, he's got his place in France. He's now running music courses there. It's called Music Retreats, and we're doing a couple of courses this year. We did a couple of courses last year, and we're writing a book together. It's kind of playing along book. So yeah, last 3 days I've been out there. We're writing some charts and getting some backing tracks together. And who would have thought?
All these years later.
I know.
It's stunning. Now, talking of friendships and communities and bringing people around you, one thing that is particularly different about you as a musician is that you lead, or you are particularly vocal in the assembling or the running of a lot of different ensembles. Now, for some people, that sounds like a hell of a lot of work and maybe something that they oppose, because it's quite nice to have a phone call to say, come here, play this, and you can be almost passive apart from what you need to worry about. Yeah. Off the top of my head, Group S, Apollo Saxophone Quartet, Hydra, your duo with Dave Hassel, your association with Fodens Band, Lions Youth Brass Band, writing for a number of wind orchestras around the world. There are so many different plates that you spin or bands that you lead. DB5, which might be one of the first gigs I ever saw you on
fun.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
What is it, do you think, that attracts you to want to make it happen yourself, whether that be writing the music, playing the music, both, or getting the people around you? Because you're very good at it, and not that many people do it that way.
Right. I think it stems back to going back to those days at Poole Grammar School when I was 16 and 17. Maybe it's to do with playing the saxophone as well. There aren't ready-made jobs there as such. But I started a saxophone quartet when I was at school. I started a band that was sort of horns and singer and rhythm section. A bit like you did.
It's similar.
With Out of the Blues, yeah. And I didn't, nothing was planned or particularly thought about or structured. It was just, we need a band, or we need a sax quartet, so let's get it together. Let's do it. And then, we need some music. We've got no music to play. We were all really listening to like Al Jarreau, and his band was so funky. Steve Gadd on drums and Sanborn playing on some charts and things like that. So I remember there was this tune called Boogie Down.
Okay.
And so I thought, cool, pre-internet and all that stuff. I was like, well, how are we going to play that? Well, I'm going to have to transcribe it. Oh, okay. So it's like listen and
Get
listen,
your ears
listen,
in check.
write some parts out, and then we went and did a couple of pub gigs, and it was just things like that. And I suppose if I'd really thought about it at that age, or maybe having people saying, "Oh, it's a lot of work. Oh, be careful," then maybe I wouldn't have done it. But when you just dive into it, and I actually think this might sound daft, but because I'm not academically minded or bright academically and flunked all my exams and stuff, it's like I wasn't thinking things through in great detail. I was just doing it. There were bands that started, and then writing and arranging for them and all that. And essentially, I'm just doing the same thing 40 years later.
It's really impressive, because a lot of people will hear the idea of running a group and all of the logistics that go with it. Because if you actually write down, even just to put one gig on and assemble 10 musicians, how they're going to get paid, who's printing the music, who's checking the music, and everything else that goes with it. It's a monstrous task for one gig alone, but you seem to thrive off bouncing between lots of different projects.
I think there are pros and cons, and without becoming too philosophical about it, but I was thinking about this the other day. what happens when you've been a musician for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you know? What I mean is, when that person is at that stage of their career, or if you call it that, you know, how are they as a person? How do they react? And what I mean is, you might get a musician who's very bitter and thinks, oh, they're owed this, and they're quite cynical. Or you might get someone who's totally opposite and is hugely positive and everything. And I was thinking, and it's something I'm continually thinking about, is, yeah, surely it's just an individual thing. And if you can match what you're actually doing with what is right for you, not for someone else, but what is actually right for you, then surely that's got to be a good thing. And I massively enjoy, okay, I've got a budget, I've got to get 12 musicians to Strasbourg to play at the World Sax Congress. We need hotels, I need some sponsorship for the flights. Okay, great, got that sorted, or this. How much can I ask the musicians to do it for? When are we going to rehearse? What are we going to play? It's like a puzzle. I think I like that. I think that's something that I enjoy. What it means is it takes up time. So, you know, and everything, and it's a bit like composing and playing the saxophone. You're juggling things around, and, you know, you're not going to have to say on the saxophone, I'm not going to have the technique that someone sitting in a room doing 6 hours practice a day will have. And if you can sort of, you know, understand that, but then you're saying, well, yeah, but I've got these albums and I'm meeting these musicians and collaborating and writing for these people, and it's like, whoa, you know, I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
you know,
as you should be.
But not in a comfort zone. But I think, just speaking openly about it now and off the cuff, it's taken me a long time to not beat myself up all the time about it by trying to spin plates.
Yep.
You know, and it's only maybe the last couple of years, I think, where it's like, right, okay, fine, this is kind of what I do now. But there's a body of work there with the compositions, for example. There's a body of work with the albums and the groups. So it's kind of been time well spent, and it's just been bloody hard work, but really good fun, you know.
You mentioned composing. Was there a defining moment when you were at music college, or even younger or older, where you decided, I'm now going to compose? Or did it come about in a more free or natural way? And the reason I ask it that way is you were one of the first people that told me about the idea of composing as really improvisation in stop time. You're sparking an idea, but then you're just laying it down onto paper or communicating it to somebody else. So was there a defining moment you went, I am now going to compose? Or did it come about because you were already creating music in different ensembles?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, I think a lot of when I was in my 20s and 30s, say with the Apollo Quartet, that was busy, it was winning competitions. But then I got a couple of groups together when I left college, and we got lots of groups together at college. Some of whom like play now, which is great. Like Mike Hamlet's group, Kachichi.
Yeah.
We started that together at college. But so the writing, what happened was, say, I'd be doing a gig at Band on the Wall in Manchester with the sort of jazz funk quintet I had when I was, say, 26, 27 years old. And there'd be some musicians in the audience from different genres or worlds, and someone might come up to me and say, oh, we really like your charts. And it'd be like, great, thank you. And they might say, well, listen, I'm a percussionist. I've got this quartet or this duo, or I'm a guitarist, and, you know, we'd like to get a piece from you. And that's how it kind of started, from people hearing my music on gigs. And then I didn't really think twice about, it's not a saxophone. Am I going to be able to write for classical guitar or vibes or or oboe or trumpet or
Mm.
but I found a lot of it for me was a combination of things. It was listening, but it was also listening to that instrument, and I was getting experience from doing extra work gigs with orchestras. So Jim Muirhead was great to me with the Halle Orchestra. He got me into the Halle, and for years and years, maybe 10 or 15 years, I was doing saxophone work with them. And what it means is, you know what saxophone parts are like in orchestras. A lot of the time you're resting, but then you get like a solo
counting.
or whatever. But in the when I was resting, I was listening quite closely to the different sections and the different instruments, and kind of taking mental notes. And I think, well, I know that helped me a lot because I'd never had formal composition lessons, but that kind of helped me a lot. So things gradually developed, and it was probably, I think it was in 2007, so 16 years ago, where I thought, right, I'm going to have to be careful here, because a lot of people were fortunately asking me to write music for them, and I thought, I don't want to mess up here and let people down. So I started a Word document, and through trial and error, I've got every piece that I've written on that. I still add to it today.
Wow. Okay.
On the one Word document, because then after maybe 5 or 6 years, I knew, right, if I need to write a 15-minute piece for Fodens, it's probably going to take me about this long.
Right.
Then I could earmark that and structure it out. It also became apparent, right, you're not going to be able to do all the gigs that you're doing at the moment. I've never really been drawn to, or maybe good enough to do, solo work. It's not something that's like really, I've had this, I'd love to do that, stand in front of an orchestra. I've never got excited by that thought. I'm not the right personality for it. But other things had to go that I enjoyed, like the orchestral work, like going and doing the saxophone extra work. I played in function bands, which were invaluable learning experience to me, and brought income in my 20s and early 30s. So it was kind of making the space to, you can't just grab an hour or two here and there to write. It needs to be full on.
I remember coming round to your house when I was about 12 or 13, and you gave me a few charts. You gave me Walk Tall, Salvador, and a chart called Cool with a K that I never played because I couldn't figure it out.
John Schofield.
Yeah. Great tune.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And I remember seeing this on your wall. You had it plastered across there. I think you were in the midst of writing a lot for Fodens at the time.
Right.
Now, from a saxophonist to running bands to composing to then being resident composer with the top at the moment.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, they are incredible.
Brass band, a whole new palette of colours to write for. What drew you to write for brass band?
Yeah, I feel as if I've been very, very privileged to work with Fodens for the 10 or 11 years that I did. It was from about 2008 to 2000, 10 or 11 years. I told you my maths was bad. But I'll tell you how it came about. In August 2007, Lauren and myself, my wife, we moved to Sandbach.
Yep.
And Stan, our son, big mate of yours and everything,
Absolutely.
Started at the boys' school. That's why we moved, because John Barber, you mentioned the DB5 before.
Yep.
That was a band that played at this pub called DB's in Winsford, had a regular gig there. John I knew, and I got to know better because we both lived in Winsford and did this gig. And John was head of music at the boys' school in Sandbach. And before we knew it, he was saying, come over. He's so enthusiastic. Come and see this gig we're doing at the boys' school. Come and see this. Oh, Fodens are doing this. So we spent a lot of time in Sandbach coming over to things. And we could see how good the schools were, and lovely town and everything. So we just about made it in time with the move to get Stan into high school here. And by total coincidence, I was fortunate enough to, in 2006, have won this award called a British Composer Award. And that was for a wind band piece that I'd written. But part of winning that was some funding from the Worshipful Company of Musicians, and I had to liaise with them, and they came back to me. I think this is how it happened, but anyway, the tuba player Les Niche.
Yes.
Les, stunning player, and he approached me, and he was playing in Fodens at that point, but doing lots of solo work, and he said, I'd really like you to write me a concerto I could play. And it worked out with the funding, with this thing from the Composer Awards and so on, but more importantly, that was my introduction to Fodens.
Okay.
So I wrote this piece for Les called Salt of the Earth. It was a 3-movement concerto, and then picked John's brains, through it. Oh, what's a baritone horn? What's a tenor horn? But the weird thing was when I studied when I was a student, like you, at the Royal Northern College of Music, they've got a brass band course there, and one of my best friends there, Martin Winters, played principal cornet in Fodens at that time. So I was always hearing about Fodens, and so all these things came together at this period. Wrote this piece for Les, was terrified when I went down to the band room for the first time, because you can hear a pin drop there. They're very, very disciplined. There's no talking back to the conductor, and it's just proper intense rehearsing, which I really like. Apart from I had a brand new piece there and was
terrified,
hoping they liked it. Yeah. Anyway, they played that at the RNCM Festival Brass. I think it must have been January 2008, and it was a couple of months after that they approached me and said, "Would you become our composer in residence?"
Wow.
It was like, wow, yeah. So that was great, and so that journey began, and working with a band and of that caliber, but just great people, really good friendships and experiences, and they gave me a lot of writing opportunities, and they recorded it all. Everything I've written for Fodens, I think maybe bar one short piece, has been recorded, and as a composer, that's kind of invaluable.
Yeah, brass bands seem to be meticulous with not only the rehearsals, but making sure CDs are recorded regularly, and there's so many concerts they do to spread the word of music as well.
Yeah. And they're brilliant doing the workshops, as you know.
Yeah.
So, we were talking before about Lions Youth Brass Band, and you've got this youth band network and the amazing people who put their time into running these bands. And then Fodens, will develop a close association with the local youth bands around the area, and they've got their own youth band as well. And will come and do workshops, and it's the collaboration.
Absolutely. It's time we heard some of your music. I have done some homework, and I have 11 tracks of yours. Some you're playing on, some you've written. I'm going to play a short excerpt of it so we don't get caught by the copyright people. And then if you would tell me either your relationship to the people that you wrote for or who the group is, and just expand a little bit on it.
Yeah, 3-letter word. So that was a piece that was commissioned by the saxophonist Hugh Wiggin, and Timothy Abel playing piano, and that's for it was a Park Lane Group commission actually. They premiered at the Passorum. In fact, you were there.
Yes, you were kind enough to take me along for my work experience, and that was mind-blowing for so many different reasons. But
no, but that piece, it's 8 or 9 minutes, I think. Sax and piano. It is technically pretty demanding, but it's been interesting that each piece has its own sort of separate life and journey. Hugh has recorded it and plays it regularly to this day. But then with Tim McAllister, the American saxophonist who we both know, recording it, it's it's there are a lot of saxophonists studying and recent graduates who seem to be playing it around the world, which is amazing. So yeah, I'm grateful. So yeah, 3-letter word. Yeah, that's a piece called Raw. I can't remember. I mean, that's from the album called Raw, and that's a wind band. That was Mainstone Symphonic Winds, and there's a fellow called Jonathan Crowhurst who seems to like my music and wanted to put an album together of it with the wind band. They did a fantastic job. I can't remember where it started as brass band or wind band.
Was it, and I'm just joining some dots together, was it initially for lions, hence the name
of course.
Raw?
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
Yeah, please forgive me if
That's that's all right.
Yeah, obviously. I think it that would have come about via the Fodens connection.
Yes.
And then getting to know Nigel Birch at Lions and having a few chats and ended up writing that piece. Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Talking of Tim.
Yeah, that's a piece called MHP, and originally that's Tim McAllister playing it with Liz Ames, and we were looking at your promo video that you filmed for that.
What a wonderful video.
Which was great. It's very good, actually.
Thank you, cheers.
But yeah, that piece started its life as a commission from Mike Hall, my friend and colleague at the RNCM. Oh. And he was having a 50th birthday concert and booked one of the main halls at the RNCM and had a string orchestra and percussion and bass, I think, and Clark Rundell was conducting, and he commissioned myself and Izzy Barrett, I think, probably someone else as well, but they were premiered at that gig, so that was an amazing thing that Mike did. It was a real honour to be able to write for him.
Brilliant. I didn't know that at all. With your connections of Fodens.
Right, okay, that's. I'm smiling because it's like a British brass band. So you're getting an excerpt of a piece sounding like that, and credit to Fodens. That's a piece called Spirit and Mingus, and one of my musical heroes is Charles Mingus, the bass player composer. I love his music so much, and I just tried to capture some of the concepts or elements and how his music has influenced me within a piece for Fodens. And just at the end of the piece, it's with narration, and Rex Richardson, the incredible American trumpet player, he narrates earlier in the piece, and then he was doing some improvising. And credit to Fodens, because at that point I asked them to get up from their seats and just walk all around the hall, and I gave them a little riff to play, and they were open to it. They did it. They were fantastic. But the lovely thing about that project or that piece was I contacted Sue Mingus. So she is Charles Mingus's widow. In fact, I didn't deliberately contact her. I just sent a message to the website saying, listen, I just wanted you to know I really like his music and it influenced this piece that I've written. Here you are, if anyone, Anyway, she got back straight away and she said, oh God, she liked the piece. And she said, here's a load of photos of Charles Mingus and all this. And she said, if you want to use them for any promo, you have my permission.
Incredible.
Yeah, lovely, wasn't it? And this is what I think with music, you don't know what's around the corner.
Of course.
And, you know, I wasn't aiming for that. I just loved this guy's music and wanted to write a piece that I felt reflected that.
And your music will allow straight away a deeper connection with her that you wouldn't have had if you had just said hi or just, you know, had a chat.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. You've mentioned Salt of the Earth already from Les's album.
Another reincarnation of it. Yeah, so Group S, when I started a group called Saxophone, originally it was 12 saxophones and rhythm section. Started that in 1994, I think, or 95. We did a couple of albums, and then I just wanted to change the sort of vibe of it and the music, and scored it for 9 saxes on a practical level as well. Yeah, so that was a little promo video for Group S, and it's interesting at Salt of the Earth because so that piece, you know, as we know, started as a concerto for tuba with brass band, but lots of pieces of mine I've taken, if it seems appropriate, I've taken and reimagined or rearranged for different groups, and I suppose because of the tuba connection, I made that piece for Group S as a feature for the bass sax and Jim Fieldhouse. But Group S is it's been operating for, as I said, since about 1994, and just some dear friends in it, you know, and some great players. But I know who I'm writing for. So I know John Helliwell's in it, and or Rob Buckland, you know, and I can write Rob anything. You can sight read anything, as you know.
Be all over it,
yeah, exactly. And then you've got, I could go through, I won't bore you, but for that recording in 2017, I think it was, Ruby and All Things Purple, the album, that was a cracking, I say it myself only because I respect them so much, that was a cracking lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, the rhythm section in itself was great.
With Gwilym on,
Gwilym Simcott, Lawrence Cottle on bass, crazy, James Pusey, guitar, and Elliot Henshaw. But it's kind of like-minded musicians. Everyone gets together and knows what the deal is, and is just in a pressure situation in a recording studio, keeping it light, keeping it moving, and just working together effectively, you know.
There's a brilliant track on that album for Rob on sopranino, and is it Jim on bass?
Oh, yeah. A little trio piece called 18.
That's it.
Yeah. That was solo sax originally. And then I thought, in fact, it goes back. I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I'll get something in my mind will suddenly pop up, and it was maybe one comment that someone made 5 years ago or 20 years ago, and I remember on the first Saxophone project, an album in 1995 at Band on the Wall. It's 2 nights at Band on the Wall. Ian Ballamy was playing in the group, playing soprano sax. And he said, yeah, you should write something for the 2 extreme saxophones in the group. He said, write a duo for sopranino and bass. And that came back into my head, 20 years later.
Wow.
And I thought, actually, that
will work.
Yeah, well, let's give it a go. And
Next, Apollo. Now, I was thinking there's so much I could pull from, with 120 commissions and recordings of previous stuff as well. So I've gone right to the very early days. There's 3. This is the first one of children's songs featuring you.
get that vibrato.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, children's songs. A suggestion from John Hall as to something we could arrange for Sax Quartet. We had some coaching sessions with him, and he mentioned that. We listened to them, and originally for solo piano, and in the front cover of the book, Chick Corea writes they lend themselves to arrangements. So we did that, and then they came out on an album, and Chick Corea heard them and wrote a lovely little note about them and everything, and the way we played them. So great pieces, little ostinatos. Yeah. With I say simple melodies. They're kind of not.
They're intertwined a lot of the time. Aren't they?
Yeah, and they each one just has this simplicity but beauty that comes with it as well. So
and these still live on today. So even last week, the Love Music Trust Sax Ensemble, we had a go at tackling a couple of these.
Yeah, that's great because Rob arranged. We did them for years and years on Apollo gigs. Then we sort of right, we need to give them a rest and new music, and we didn't do anything with them, and then people were asking, and Rob had some time at one point, and so arranged them, took a selection of them and arranged them, so it's great they're available.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Gordon Jacob. Remember, it's a really good piece. It's a really good piece, and it's one of those ones that was there, and that was 4 movements, I think, and just a solid piece of music.
Would that have been in the first couple of years of you guys together?
I guess that would have been 1986 or 1987, something like that.
So around the time you were at college?
We would definitely be at college then, yeah.
Do you recognise this introduction?
Oh.
We would like to play Gordon Jacobs' first saxophone quartet.
Very naughty of you, James.
It was written in 1971 and dedicated to Paul Harvey and the English London Saxophone Quartet. It is in 4 movements: Allegro moderato, Scherzo, Molto lento, and a march-like finale. Jacob, whilst teaching at the Royal College, was known to have hidden under grand pianos when the air raids were commencing in World War II. He also had a passion for fast cars and held a full driving licence up until his 90th birthday.
Plenty.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I've mentioned Dave Hassel.
My voice has dropped since then.
A little, just a little.
Tiny bit.
Yeah. The next couple include Dave Hassel. So this is from Sandancer.
Yeah, it's been wonderful collaborating with Dave, and I think when I first came to Manchester, a load of us used to go to Band on the Wall and just listen to gigs, you know, and his band, the Petos, regularly played there. And then I ended up on a few gigs with Dave, and then mid-90s, he said, why don't you come round, you know, let's just have a play, just the two of us, and try some stuff out. And this is how the duo started. So initially what we did was, because obviously there's no ready-made music there, we recorded rehearsals, and then we'd play for an hour, and then we'd listen back at a later date in between rehearsals, and we'd come back at the next rehearsal and say, yeah, that little bit there, you know, let's take that idea, because it was all freely improvised.
Yeah.
Let's take that little bit there and develop it. But for a track like that on the album Sandancer, our first album, a couple of years later, the concept behind that track was simply Dave had this high energy groove he wanted to play. I chose the baritone sax, and nothing was planned, just improvised over it. You're totally free playing over that particular groove. And I think it's part of the journey.
It's an incredible process to approach it both open as that, and then maybe retrospectively go back and pull parts that you liked or energies or colours that you liked from it. It's
I think it mirrors the way my playing, not on a technical level, but on a kind of musical, maybe confidence levels. So going back to before, playing in big bands at school but never improvising.
Yeah.
And then you're playing from chord changes and improvising in certain groups and stuff like that. And then you find out improvisation and composition and performing are all
part of the same world.
One thing to then totally just play.
Yeah.
With nothing planned.
You've taken us already on to the next group, a
Right.
Beatos.
So yeah, that's Dave's group, Dave Hassel's group, Apitos. 4 horns, rhythm section, massive learning curve, just, picking up those grooves, playing with that band for the last 20 years, picking up those grooves and listening to a lot of, new styles of music, and it's infectious, isn't it? It's just like, it's amazing.
There's a common trend as well here that you establish early, good, healthy relationships with these different musicians and find a way of working with them, even if it changes or the ensembles change. And this is the third ensemble that's got Dave in as well.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that group's called Hydra, and Dave, myself, and the guitarist Nick Svark, who's based over in Leeds. And that is a trio I would love to promote and develop a lot more this year, for the next couple of years, because I feel as if it's a group I feel very, again, not in a comfort zone, certainly not. It's very dangerous when we play. There's a lot of stuff you don't know where it's going to go. But in terms of as a musician and what I want to achieve with my improvising and collaborations, that I think is a really good kind of group to be involved with.
I feel that the concept of Hydra, from what I know of it, is very similar, as it's a bit like a musical metaphor for your career as a musician. You're not too sure where it will go in time. You've got these landmarks like ensembles or compositions that you've got to write, but in between it can go in lots of different
that's right. And I think that the part of the beauty of it is that you might be playing a particular tune, but then it doesn't have to be sort of not restricted, but it doesn't have to stay on the form or the changes. If harmonically or rhythmically, if it's going somewhere else, rather than fight it and try and bring it back to, no, we're in this structure.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's go with it. And when I think back to years ago, and that would have been like a totally foreign concept. But for that to happen now in front of an audience and not to kind of freak out and just be confident with it and just kind of trust your ears.
And it's the knowledge of you're going to be supported by the other musicians as well. You're
Exactly.
not going to be left out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the final thing with that for me is with my improvisation with a group like that, I'm aiming to draw upon my experiences as a contemporary classical player, the jazz I've done, and just bring all those things together. So for me, that affects how I practice as well, and the sort of concepts that I bring to how I practice that will help enable that kind of freedom, hopefully. So,
now you mentioned you're not one to stand in front of an ensemble and solo, but this is a I beg to differ. This is brilliant.
Yeah, that's a piece called Dark Rain. So a concerto, 20-minute concerto for 2 saxophones with wind band. And that was a performance in Portugal. There's a fantastic saxophone festival at a place called Palmelo near Lisbon. In fact, I'm going back there this July, which is lovely simply because, you know, obviously everything's been online and postponed and delayed because of COVID and everything. But that was with the Navy Band, I think, and the other soloist there with me was a really good friend of mine, Enrique Portovedo. And he said it was funny what he said to me, because there are some tricky moments in that piece, and we were rehearsing it a couple of months before, just the two of us. And he said, "Oh, it's so nice to play something that's just a bit of fun, Andy." I was like, all right, okay. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? Because I was like roasting up, trying to get these jumps and harmonics and God knows what. And he said, because he's involved in a lot of electroacoustic music, electronics, and this, and it's absolutely. He showed me some of the pieces. Like I was like, oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I know.
Last piece.
Yeah.
Mancunity.
Yeah, that was a little excerpt from Mancunity, which was, I've had quite a long-standing association with Manchester Jazz Festival, and they have a commissioning project that they've run for a number of years, and I applied to that a few times and didn't get it. It's fine, so that's life. But then I think in 2018 I applied, and they said, yeah, let's do something. So that opened the Manchester Jazz Festival May 2019, and it was an hour-long piece of music, different movements. But the interesting thing for me with that was they said, right, you can choose the musicians for this you're going to write for, 12-piece band. And I said to them, do I need to have a male-female balance in this? Because as there is now, quite rightly, there's an awareness of that, and Steve Mead, who runs it, he said, no, you can pick the musicians that you really want and for how you imagine this concept in your mind. And he said, my job is to ensure that over the whole festival, you know, the equality is there and equal representation. So as it happened anyway, it was a lovely opportunity, and I wanted to. It's very important to me about collaborating with younger musicians. The stage I'm at in my career is what you could call it, maybe, if you're feeling generous, you could call it mid-career. But then I'm working with someone like Dave Hassel, who's a different generation to me, older. But then I'm seeing some of the young musicians and what they're doing, and I'm learning a lot, and what they're doing now, and you know what you're doing, you know, the use of electronics and production, and you know, just the way music in general is moving on and transitioning. I thought, yeah, this is a great opportunity to have a lot of these musicians in one space, and I'll, a bit like for Group S, I know who's going to be in the band, so I can write for them accordingly. Claire Cope is playing keyboards in it, Caitlin Lang singing, playing flute, sax, and Gemma Fries. And I asked Gemma to do it because the Jazz Festival had asked me to do, they had this thing called Hot House, and they would sort of mentor younger musicians who would apply they'd give them gigs at the festival, there'd be workshops, there'd be one-to-ones, and they asked me to be involved in that, and that's how I met Gemma. And I just thought, wow, there's something here that I really like. There was something very deep, rhythmically actually, when she performed. She was playing the keyboards and her groove and feel was so solid, but she was singing over the top of it and playing around with the time over the top of it, and some of the colours and her musical influence. I thought, God, yeah, this is really interesting. How can we, let's see if she can do this. But then a lot of her contribution to that piece, I couldn't really write heavy notated music for her. It was more talking about it and hearing it and her picking it up by ear. So yeah, an absolute Aaron Wood played in it as well. I got together with Aaron because it's like he's got all these pedals and effects and is so good with them. It's not that I'm not interested. It doesn't matter anyway. And screamy trumpet players who might play lead trumpet in a big band who are brilliant, and that's what they do. But it doesn't really excite me in the way that a musician like Aaron does, who's exploring sound and colours and possibilities. So I had a couple of sessions where I said, right, tell me about these pedals. What can you do? How can you do this? How much time do you need to set it up and then play? And that was very much affected the writing in some part. For example, he could get 4-part chords and set the intervals. Yeah. So he's got this parallel thing going on, and I might have him. And there were 5 horns in a section, so he might be doing as a little riff that's quite jagged, and in the gaps, the other 4 horns, I've scored out the same intervals.
Okay, yeah. So you're doubling the colours. Yeah.
And things like that. So it was fascinating getting into that kind of detail. Josh on percussion. Yeah. And Josh is brilliant because we have Dave on drums, Jack McCarthy playing percussion, does incredible on all the hand percussion and colours. But then I needed someone who could play tuned percussion and hand percussion. And again, Josh, I think he must have graduated from the college by then, but only just. Same with Caitlin and Aaron. So, yeah, Nick Svark on guitar and, different players. So, yeah, collaborating with the younger generation, and it doesn't feel, I'm saying that now, but what it's driven by is just like music. I like what they're doing.
At the core of it.
Yeah, it's like co-writing songs with, say, someone like Caitlin. I like what she's doing. I've got a project with James Girling and Carmel Smicklesgill, a little trio we're getting together, and again, similar things. So some things will work out, some won't, but it's intriguing to me to then collaborate and see what comes out of it.
Absolutely. Now, from everything we've looked at here and everything you've mentioned, it's so clear that there's not one category that you fit into as a creative or a musician, and that has an impact on your life in the sporadic ways that it can go. But at the core of all of that, one thing that we don't always speak about as musicians, because we often talk about the music or the career, is family. And at the core of it, you've got a wonderful wife and children, musicians, and that's a really tricky thing to do for anybody, but in particular with the way that creatives have an unsure pathway, that can be a really tricky thing. What advice would you give to somebody about that aspect of life?
Yeah, first of all, I am very fortunate. Lauren is amazing, she's a fantastic musician herself, and it's I look at friends and colleagues and people I know, and I think, if you are a musician, you just need, if there's someone else in your life, a partner or, husband, wife or whatever, it's finding that balance. It's sussing out, right, is there an empathy? Do you each understand what's going on here? Unfortunately, Lauren and myself would juggle it around. So, you know, I remember there were times, you know, where I'd say when Stan and Ruby were young, right, I'll stay at home on Saturday night because you've got this gig. Mm-hmm. It's going to pay 3 times what I would get if I was out.
Yeah.
And you'll be back 3 hours earlier.
Nice.
So it's like, I said, you do that. I'll do some arranging. I'll probably watch Match of the Day.
Yeah. Oh, I see where this is going, yeah.
No, but it's an ongoing thing, though. I think it's an very interesting point that isn't spoken about that much, actually.
No.
But there needs to be that. I suppose I'm not going to give advice about it because it's such a personal thing and everyone does their own thing. But I have been very lucky and fortunate in terms of finding that kind of someone who understands. And I love what she does as well. I mean, Lauren has got into composing about 5 years ago now, you know. So it's quite funny sometimes because she always used to say to me when I'm in the zone with writing a commission, especially when there's a deadline coming, it's like, you know, I'd just be out in the music room from when I got up to when I go to bed. And like Stan or Ruby or Lauren would just like bring a meal out every 3 or 4 hours. But now she's doing it.
Oh, I love it.
So that's quite good. And certainly, again, it's another question, maybe a question for you. It's with Stan and Ruby. I didn't particularly. We never pushed them into getting into music. I think, you know, they both played instruments when they were younger, but there was no pressure. You know, it was trying. You know, Ruby's got this passion for language and English literature, and you know, and she loves listening to music. She doesn't play an instrument, which is absolutely fine, but she appreciates what's involved with music. And as you know, you work with Stan, my son, and he's doing his producing and bass playing and things like that, and just sort of starting off in the music business, which is great, you know. So
part of the reason I started this podcast was an excuse to talk to people like yourself on that sort of deeper plane where you can cut the waffle and just get to proper conversations like this, which I feel already really lucky to do. And this is the first interview that will go out, but the second one that I've done. The other one is that I think in our culture, there are certain times that we forget to remind each other how much we appreciate each other and things that they've done. And it's nearly 20 years. I was 9 when I first met you, and it was at the RNCM Sax Day.
Right.
James Cummings, my teacher, brought me along.
Right.
And over the years, you've been a massive influence, whether it just be advice or a lesson or sharing music with me or listening or gigs or whatever. I know I wouldn't be doing what I do now without your influence. Even laying out the pathway of how to lead a band. Oh, well, that's how Andy does it. So I can try it this way, and you know, whether it be stuff that you write or you play or what you say, you're really appreciated by so many people. And I've got a few messages for you from I've got in touch with some people.
It's very kind of you to say so, but I don't look back at things. I hate looking back at things. I never listen to any of my recordings, mainly because I don't think I'm particularly good, but also I want to focus on the looking forward. This is very unexpected. I'm going to have to try and hold it together.
Well, maybe it'll make for better viewing if you don't. I've got in touch with a few people that you've either taught, worked with, played with over the years, and they have some messages for you.
Hi Andy, just leaving you a quick message to say thanks for all of the opportunities and chances that I've had because of you, to play with you, to work with you, and to be involved in projects that you're working in, and to have you as somebody who's been a real role model, you know, going through school, and then even like professionally as somebody who is doing the music thing, and that's been really inspiring to me over the years. So thanks for all of that, and catch you soon.
Hi, my name's Rob Buckland. I've known Andy for, 37 years now. We first met as wet behind the ears 18-year-old, 19-year-old students at the Royal Northern College of Music. I was playing clarinet and saxophone, he was playing bassoon and saxophone at the time. And we started working together almost immediately. I remember him vividly at the time telling me that he had a clear vision in his life that what he wanted to be was a composer and a saxophone player. His model, his idol at the time, I think one of his many idols at the time was Bob Mintzer, a great friend of ours now, incredible tenor player, known of course to everybody in the jazz and broader musical world. And I remember thinking, crikey, how do you know that? You know, I want to be a composer and a saxophone player, and I want to run projects that feature my music. Here we are 37 years later, and crikey, look at the body of work that Andy has created, generated. And I think the thing that rings truest all the way through to me is that single-minded self-belief that he only wants to do his music his way. He plays the music he wants to play, he plays in musical situations that he creates, that he wants to be part of. He's not interested in expending energy in just conforming to musical norms, playing in more traditional music situations just as a sideman. He wants to do his thing with his sound, in his playing, in his writing. And that's why we're here 37 years later with this incredible body of highly distinctive work. Whether you hear one note of him playing, be it in a quartet, we shared the stage with him for all of those years in the Apollo Quartet, of course. Whether you hear it in his chamber writing, his symphonic writing, his orchestral writing, one bar of music, you know it's Andy Scott. And I think that's such an inspirational legacy to have been, to witness and to have been, to have collaborated with in some of those projects. I've been part of those incredible projects, working in Group S, formerly Sax Assault, the incredible double saxophone concerto, Dark Rain, that Andy penned for John Hall and myself, that we've played all over the world and recorded. Countless solo pieces, duo pieces that I've recorded on my albums and performed everywhere. It's difficult to imagine a world that hasn't been so incredibly influenced by his music. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and here's to the next 37 years. Crikey, there's a thought. Nice one, matey.
Wow. Hi Andy, I just wanted to give you a massive thank you for everything you've helped me with and done with me over the past couple of years. I wouldn't be here studying at Leeds if it wasn't for you sparking my passion for jazz, helping my improvisation massively, and just getting me into the rabbit hole of all the cool theory. I just wanted to give you a big thank you for all of that, all the compositions you've done and all the support you've given me over the years. Thank you very much, Andy.
G'day Andy, how are ya? Thank you so much for everything that you do for the saxophone community. You're the most genuine person that I know, such an amazing human, and thank you so much for being a great friend, and I hope to see you in Australia real soon.
Andy Scott is an incredible musician who quite simply makes things happen in the musical world, and the musical community is a much better place for having Andy Scott at the heart of it. For example, he might compose an enormous work in the contemporary classical vein for an enormous ensemble, or he might be freely improvising or playing in an Afro-Cuban band. He's a source of inspiration, in short, for so many different kinds of musicians. And something that I love about Andy and that really inspires me is that he draws so much inspiration from so many different kinds of music. Thanks, Andy, for all your incredible work.
Hello, Andy. Sorry about the mafia-style voice. Just wanted to say a massive thank you to you for everything you've done for me. You have quite literally shaped me into the person I am today. The advice and education and the role model you've been for me has quite literally changed the person that I am, and hugely for the better. Thank you so much.
Hi Andy, I've known you for a while now, and from the beginning of being at juniors and having lessons with you all the way through to now post-college working with you, writing and collaborating, you've always been so kind and supportive and encouraging, and it's just a pleasure to know you, and thank you so much for everything that you do for me and for the music community and for everyone that you work with.
Dear A, hope to find you well, and I hope this video arrives in time. I think there's an homage being made to you, and it's a pleasure to be part of it. And just to say that I remember with a lot of emotion our interpretation of Dark Rain in Palmela. It was an highlight for me. And that's it. Hope to see you soon. And I still think that it really would be very cool to have you as a neighbor here in south of Aveiro. And that's it. This week I'm making orchestral music, a piece by Einar Goebbels, and I'm playing the saxophones and the bass clarinet. So challenge, and I got a little bit lost in time, but I hope this arrives good for you. A huge egg, my friend.
It's been my really good fortune to know, to work with and have Andy as a friend for the past 25 years. As a composer, arranger, performer and teacher, Andy has a wonderful gift of taking the smallest of concepts and ideas and creating something quite amazing. A great saxophonist, brilliant composer, fairly average bassoonist, but more importantly, just a lovely person. Many thanks, Andy, and here's to many more years. Cheers.
Wow, blimey. I'm absolutely gobsmacked. Yeah, that's very kind of all of those people, and for you for taking the trouble to do this.
You're very welcome. It's something we don't often do when life is so busy, and to stop and actually acknowledge what it is that you do is appreciated by so many. So thank you
so much. Yeah, I'm kind of lost for words.
That's quite all right. We have reached the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
For those of you that are still listening at home, thank you very much. I'll put a link to all of Andy's work, his websites, his future workshops on the show notes. Please like it, share it, and get in touch if you want anybody interviewed in particular, or you want me to go down a certain path with a creative person that you have in mind. The more I hear, the better this podcast will be. Wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing, be creative, connect with people, and be exactly you. Peace.
Fantastic, James.
Well done.
Wow.
Did it.
Thank you. Incredible.